It was 2012 and I had stumbled upon a show I had never seen before, Sword Art Online. This was my very first introduction to anime as a young kid. I ended up really enjoying it, especially the romance. So I searched around to find other similar romance shows. This led me to my second anime I ever watched, Angel Beats, and the third was a title I would come to see again in its original form 12 years later, Mashiroiro Symphony. The anime for Mashiroiro Symphony released back in 2011. Sure, it wasn't anything spectacular at the time, but having seen it as one of my very first anime, I remember it as a very fond memory. So when the visual novel remake of Mashiroiro Symphony was translated into English this year, I was very excited to read it for the first time, especially considering two important factors. The anime actually had a confirmed winner, this girl and her panda cat animal, and this character absolutely despised men. So I was gonna read this to get to the bottom of three questions. What other romances did I miss out on? Why did the anime choose Mew as the winner? And what's the deal with this girl? Someone who got their own exclusive standalone visual novel as the most popular fan favorite character. Thanks to Shirvune for providing me a review copy for me to check out and for showing me a classic romance title that still stands as a heartfelt story. When a private girls' school starts taking in boys from a separate school, the female students aren't very excited at the new change. However, their opinions begin to shift due to one male student who decides to play peacekeeper, Shingo Uryu. Except for one particular girl, the most renowned student in the school, Airi Sena. This isn't a very unique or thrilling premise, but for what it does simply, it does it very well. Airi is a very difficult person, stubborn, serious, and short-tempered. A large contrast from our calm, considerate, and atmosphere-conscious main character. And when put together, they turn out to be one of my favorite couples. It's funny how despite the harsh objections Airi's sending Shingo, he just shrugs it off and he continues to play nice. Really, it's only a matter of time until the girl starts to fall for him. Hard. In fact, while Mashiroiro Symphony makes me feel like I'm watching an anime rom-com eroge, the prose makes me feel like I'm reading a shoujo manga instead. The love interests constantly narrate their thoughts, both in how they view the situation and how they think their partner sees it. That active, conscious thinking allows them to slowly work their way through their feelings about the other individual. By allowing them to learn the deeper aspects of the other person, both their virtues and vices, they are able to appreciate their partner and strive to be a part of their lives. The result, a Mashiroiro Symphony's characters having strong foundations. Shingo is very considerate of Airi. At first, it's because of this overly compulsive desire to improve the social atmosphere around him. He is, after all, intruding on an all-girls school, but that eventually transforms into him recognizing Airi's strengths and the underlying desperation of it all. Meanwhile, Airi slowly warms up to Shingo's presence in her life, not as a force wanting to tear her world apart, but as an important person necessary for her to change. You know, the good, intimate, mutual characterization that I especially love in my romances. The other heroines follow this similar playbook. Sure, it's not as contrast conflict heavy as Airi's, the exception being Sana's, but each of them complement Shingo's core identity, and when their problems get fully resolved, you are treated to a plethora of cute romantic moments. The romance, once in honeymoon mode, is blissfully wholesome. Both partners do a great job at being an affectionate partner, some even going hard on their tender, loving side, one of them almost being a bit seemingly sadistic in doing so. There's also some extremely cute chibi CGs in here. Really, it shows how dedicated some individuals are at displaying their love, both normally and in the passionately animated H scenes in the 18+ patch, including one particular cheerful maid. Anjay is the devoted maid of the school, someone that's dedicated to her housekeeping duties while doubling as a student. She's upbeat and cheerful, always ready to meet the students with a smile on her face, but can come across as pushy, wild, and untimely. But at the core of it all is her driving motivation to find her future master. The maid thing becomes less weird when you substitute maid as famous celebrity and future master as lover/husband. I find maid heroines in visual novels a strange gimmick, but Mashiroiro Symphony does a fine job tapping into that quirk of hers, actually following up with her beliefs and motivations, which ideally any story with a maid-centric main character should do. I like the dynamic between the two. Anji and Shingo run parallels as people who like to take care of people, and yet also appear to be dangerously overcompensating for something. A benevolent virtue hiding the true issue, at least compared to someone like Miu, who is naturally selfless and the wisest out of the heroines. That said, I find the actual story structure of Anji's route lacking in energy. It feels like I'm going through the motions compared to the motivated energy in the other routes. Generally speaking, Mashiroiro Symphony has fine story structure. The progression of the story has logical cause and effect to the relationship development. Actions taken to resolve the conflict builds up the affinity of the pairing, which then takes into the next conflict they have to solve, either external or interpersonal. That's perfectly fine. There's just a slight problem. Given the style of the prose, certain character personalities, and the lack of a conflict after establishing couple status makes the story feel painfully slow at times. You'll end up wondering why certain couples just don't get it on when they clearly like each other already. It's even worse when you aren't exactly vibing with a particular heroine too. There's also the factor of Sana. Sana hating men is one thing, but this short-stacked gremlin refuses to back down on her slanderous tirade against Shingo. It gets pretty tiresome to see if you're not tolerant of her. To the point where it just makes me wonder why she's the fan favorite. People might hate the slow pacing, given how meticulous the build-up is. But on the other hand, I like how it's actually explored this deep, because when you have a heroine like Sakuno, a very soft-spoken and reserved individual, that attention to detail to inner romantic feelings is important. She is Shingo's stepsister after all. Sakuno is a very faithful, endearing, and homely individual to Shingo, while also being a bit cheeky on the banter side too. She is that dependable little sister, and that's what makes the romance between them the most difficult obstacle they both have to face. You'll get to see how the heroines struggle with their feelings a lot, and it's accomplished through constant POV changes. What's important about those is that they show the conversations between the main character / heroine and the supporting cast. They're best friends. The side cast effectively act as venting partners for the main couple, and I like how vocally affirming they are. It really helps out for a character like Sakuno, who's very quiet and unsure. She may be stoic, but her inner feelings are just as passionate as the others, if not more. She just needs that push. However, I feel that her route also falls in the trap of slow pacing and is the worst out of the bunch. It's very intent on exploring the after effects of dating your sister. Great at highlighting Sakuno's hesitance and fears, much slower at actually trying to get the damn two together. Can't say that Shingo helps out either. He's too considerate, overthinks a lot, and restricts his own feelings if necessary. And that's a recurring problem of his in every route. So what I like about how the story decides to handle his development is by comparing and contrasting the heroines to him, including one girl who's the purest out of all of them, a person of genuine selflessness and kindness. Miu is quite the pet lover, being responsible for taking care of the wild animals in her club. You could say that it's her motherly kindness that makes the animals allow themselves to get pampered by her, humans included, even if one of them isn't exactly the most friendly person around. The trio of Miu, Sana, and Shingo in her route is a very interesting dynamic. Throughout the story, Sana is non-stop at hating Shingo, even more so for getting close to Miu, but over time, those gradual interactions allow Sana to lower her guard and relax around him. Interactions that are mostly talking about Miu and her respect, fondness, and admiration towards her, which then further drives Shingo's affection towards Miu. You can probably see where this is going, and it hurts. All three of them share very similar natures. They're all kind-hearted in their own ways, but they can't see how their intense dedication hurts themselves in the process. The others end up recognizing that, gets upset by it, and then strives to help them in the best way that they can, even if it might go against their wishes. It's a constant cycle between all three where each person is wishing for the other's happiness at the risk of their own. And in a romance where only two people can be together, someone's gonna end up heartbroken. Miu's route has the most emotionally impactful ending out of all the routes, and it's my favorite one. It surpasses its initial expectation of being just a simple romance to transform into a story about learning to do what's right for the sake of the other's happiness because you love them so much. A touching climax, one that made me tear up a little bit at the end. Miu's route really decided to emotionally destroy me. both in dramatic pains and bittersweet feelings. To which then, Sana's route completely healed me in sugary sweet cuteness. Now, an important note to make clear is that Sana's route is not included in the base visual novel. It's an entirely separate game you have to purchase. Here, the story follows the same common route beginning, but then branches out into Sana's specific story. One that decides to hit you non-stop with adorableness one after the other. The visual novel makes a clear point that both genders can change in the presence of the other, and that couldn't be any more true than in Sana's route. For how much Sana slings insults and launches flying kicks, she more than makes up for it in pure-hearted affection. This overly love-struck girl goes hard, and all of her actions just make you want to cherish and protect her, celebrating in some wonderful-looking CGs, because she desperately needs it. Her intense, passionate clinginess is not just an endearing character trait, it's an after effect of her low self-esteem and confidence in herself as a partner. In her eyes, she's unattractive. She's not as stylish or well-endowed as the other girls. She's blunt, foul-mouthed, and violent, all of which was solely directed at Shingo alone. Who could possibly find her appealing, much less have faith in her as a romantic partner? What's worse is that she compares herself to Miu, someone she looks up to and aspires to be like. It's all hopeless, she might as well say. Sana constantly struggles with her own doubts all throughout the route, so it's up to Shingo to prove his love to her and reassure her that she's the only one for him, which then leads to some cute cuddling moments. It's this back and forth that Sana's route focuses on, working out the problems and celebrating small victories in their relationship with the goal of becoming better partners for each other. That's what I like about Mashiroiro Symphony. It's a slow burn romance, but one that showcases the full extent of the relationship, with all the personal thoughts, actions, and feelings put on display. All of the routes contain that same spirit, where the couple acknowledges the other's strengths and weaknesses and decides to be right there by their side to support them, and ultimately change for the better together. 4 out of 5 with a sealed recommendation. I would also like to thank everyone on Patreon for supporting me in covering visual novels. You guys are fantastic, and if you'd like to be a part of that effort, please consider subscribing. Now, if you're curious in another romance visual novel, I recommend checking out this one over here, or this one for a general recommendation. And finally, here's a picture of the cutest mascot ever.